All right, so we left off the last video. We were looking at how to calculate a company's Z-score, and your assignment was to calculate the Z-score for the company that we just looked at and its financials. And if you finish that and you've got the right number, you should have gotten a Z-score right around 1.6, right around 1.6, depending on how you rounded off each of the calculations. Because remember, you calculated the 4 ratios, multiplied each ratio times the assigned weight, added up the 4 ratios, and the sum, you should have arrived at about 1.6. So what does that tell us about this company? According to the scale on the bottom of the page there, that suggests that they are very questionable. But what else would you want to know in this situation? Well, if it were I'd want to know, how does this compare to a year ago? If our Z-score a year ago was 0.6, we'd say, okay, we're progressing, we're moving in the right direction. If a year ago our score was, 5, well, our financial performance has worsened. It's gotten much worse, and I would be more concerned. So I'd want to know, how is this, number one, what is it today, 1.6, and how is it trending over time? To take a further look, dig a little deeper on this Z-score, take a look at the 4 ratios. Let's examine those for a moment. The first ratio, current assets minus current liabilities divided by total assets. What is that a measurement of? Think back to our earlier discussion on the 12 key financial ratios. Current assets as compared to current liabilities. You may recall that was a ratio called the current ratio when we're looking at liquidity. So A is a measurement of liquidity. You may just want to write that to the left of that particular ratio. A is a measurement of liquidity. What about B? B, we have retained earnings, which are the profits of the business over the history of the business, divided by total assets. What is that a measurement of? Retained earnings, that's profit, so we're looking at profitability. Short-term, long-term, that's long-term profitability. B is a measurement of long-term profitability. And if B is a measurement of long-term profitability, as we look at C, C is operating profit for the current period, which would be the current year, divided by total assets. So if B is a measurement of long-term profitability, I would suggest that C is a measurement of short-term profitability. So write that to the left of the letter C, short-term profitability. And finally, D. D, we have equity versus debt. Remember, we saw that ratio earlier as well under leverage ratios. We refer to that as the risk ratio, debt versus equity. It's a measurement of risk. So write that to the left of the letter D, the risk ratio. So the Z-score looks at liquidity, long-term profitability, short-term profitability, and risk. And based on the weights that are assigned to each ratio, Dr. Altman clearly thought that short-term profitability had the biggest impact on a company's financial performance, followed by A, liquidity, followed by B, long-term profitability, and followed by D, the debt-to-equity ratio, the risk ratio. So now, once you've calculated the Z-score and you've looked at the trending of that Z-score, the next thing I would want you to look at is, how can we improve this number? How can we make this better? Is it raising price? Is it cutting expenses? Better management of our working capital? How would you improve this Z-score?